Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to all of you on behalf of APAC News Network. Today we have with us as guest Dhananjay Ganjoo. He is the Managing Director of India and SAARC for F5, and he will be talking on the different solutions and services from F5 and on the overall Indian security market, especially in the post-pandemic scenario. So, a warm welcome to you, Dhananjay, on behalf of APAC News Network.
Hey
Uh,
Rajneesh, thank you very much for having me here.
sure.
I'm honored to
Pleasure.
be part of this engagement.
Sure. And briefly, APAC News Network, we are a media organization headquartered out of Noida with pan India presence and presence outside India in Singapore, Malaysia, and Dubai. And primarily, we focus on technology deployments across focus verticals like governance, healthcare, education, BFSI, enterprise IT itself, startup community, the SME community, and the like. So, primarily, maybe the best way to start the discussion would be if you can give us an update on the F5 portfolio currently for the Indian market, and this can be both solutions as well as services. Dhanji, you're on mute. You're on mute.
There you go. I'm sorry about that. Thanks very much, Rajneesh. These are exciting times for F5. We have recently launched the F5 Distributed Cloud Services as one of our latest portfolio to the addition of our security and our ADC portfolio. So, as you know, F5 has been a leader in the application delivery controller market, and that's the DNA of the company when it started. But in year 2010, we consciously took the decision of virtualizing our environment, and way back a dozen years ago, F5 launched the virtual editions of the same products that are being consumed as an appliance inside the data center, and continued that journey with a whole lot of addition of security product line, and the latest one to that being the F5 Distributed Cloud Services, where F5 technology can now be consumed of our own cloud. This is our application delivery network cloud. We can also be consumed on the public cloud. So it's the journey for our clients that are also taking a similar journey from their on-prem, very infrastructure intensive, to a microservices containerized environment on the cloud. And we have moved along with that journey.
Okay, so specifically, if we look at the last couple of quarters, especially during the pandemic, when the lots of the enterprises moved to a work from anywhere kind of environment,
Mhm.
and which typically meant a lot of heterogeneous devices and networks that came into the system. So specifically regards to security or say identity management, uh, how has the F5 experience been with the enterprises? Even the workload patterns would have changed. So how have your solutions been sort of, if I may say, um, managed to sort of mitigate the challenges evolving out of there?
So, good question, Rajneesh. There are two factors impacting this. One is a lot of our clients are rapidly moving towards a more digital transformed organization, which is all of their monolithic codes is now getting transformed into a more microservices containerized code that can be installed anywhere in their private cloud, in their public cloud, and needs similar kind of protections that they were used to when it was always on in their prem. And what F5 does is very smartly stitches this whole story together from a point of view of the same engine that was protecting the applications of our clients when they were on prem it's the same engine that is protecting the applications when the clients decided to containerize their applications, move to public cloud, or point their web and applications to our cloud services and consume web application firewall and API protection from F5 offered cloud distributed cloud services. The uniqueness of our solution is whether we are consumed on prem as an appliance or as a virtual product, whether we are consumed on a public cloud or a private cloud, or whether the services are being given out of our own application distributed network, the security engine and the policies and the features remain the same. So there is no new learning that the client has to do. In fact, on our F5 distributed cloud services, what we have done is we have made it even simpler for the clients to consume our technology by removing massive amount of complexity that is usually associated with application protection. Application protection is very different from your layer 3 network protection. Application protection tends to get a little more complex, and our job when we launched the distributed cloud services was to remove that complexity and kind of give a very automated deployment model. And I have taken a couple of challenges in the market with some of our clients saying, can you onboard an application in 10 minutes? And we have proven that we can do that with full blocking mode. So that's the exciting part of getting to be a platform player through the F5 distributed cloud services. But at the same time, the technology engine being the same behind the scenes, so that then there is no reskilling requirement that is required either with our partners or with our customers. So that is one part. The other part is, now that the network is no longer within a touch and feel distance of a data center, it is kind of all over the place. So the containerized applications are now deployed in different domains in different clouds. It solves one problem, but it creates a completely different problem. The problem it solves is, I no longer, or the clients no longer need to build massive data centers of their own, manage it of their own. If they have containerized their applications in a microservices environment, then they can migrate these to the cloud environment, whether public or private. But nobody puts the single application on a single cloud. Applications are diverse and are usually put in different clouds, right? Maybe in AWS and Azure. So while we solve the problem and you can quickly switch on infrastructure in those clouds, the other problem that is massively created is, how do we connect them? There is no out of the box solution either by Azure or GCP or AWS that allows seamless connectivity between clouds. So F5 distributed cloud services now offers multi-cloud networking capabilities with security, which is the order of the day and the need of the hour.
Okay, I would like more details on that. In fact, that's the next question was what you talked about were two areas. One, basically, when you were saying you were stitching together the different applications in different types of clouds,
Mhm.
and it is very true. Typically, today enterprises are in a multi-cloud environment. So there will
That's right.
be certain applications on private cloud, certain applications might be on public cloud again from multiple vendors, can
That's true.
be Azure,
Yeah.
AWS, or GCP. Then there can be certain applications on the edge,
Yes.
and that kind of scenario. So the two situations that you mentioned, that engine, which you said this engine, one advantage was that engine has primarily not changed even when it was on prem. The way the
Yes.
engine was working, it has not changed.
Correct.
However, what typically in this multi-cloud environment is happening is these applications, and especially in this pandemic scenario, there was need of very dynamic provisioning,
That's right.
dynamic provisioning between. So, how did those, when the thing was so dynamic, how did your engine support that? That is one part. And the second part was also you mentioned that the underlying security layer,
Mhm.
how was that managed even in that scenario and optimally without reducing the productivity of the organizations.
Correct. So there are two aspects. Let me answer the second question first. There are two aspects to workload protection. That is your application protection. One is non-signature based web application firewalls that you can deploy. And as I said, our firewalls, web application firewalls, whether you consume them as an appliance, whether you consume them in a virtual world and hypervisor environment, or whether you consume them through our cloud, the technology is the same. So there is no relearning required. You can actually take the config file from one environment and dump it into the other, change the IP address, and you're on. It's as straightforward as that. However, when you containerize your apps, other than web application protection, what you also need is cloud workload protection. There are other threat surfaces that you open up in your application in a public cloud environment, which requires cloud workload protection to be put in. So that's the other aspect, along with WAF, that we need to take care in, and the same is available of the F5 distributed cloud services. In terms of multi-cloud networking, let me tell you the problem of connecting two clouds together, because there are applications that are residing in different clouds. The way the industry does it today is a very painful way, right? They create landing zones in different clouds, and these landing zones are not very simple to create. You have to have a router, a layer 3 firewall, API gateway, a web access firewall, a reverse proxy. These are, you have to deploy in one landing zone, then you have to replicate this in the other landing zone of a different cloud, and then you have to hairpin them and connect them together, right? Which means you're now dealing with 5 different technologies in cloud 1, 5 different technologies in cloud 2, and 5 different consoles to manage this, right? Operationally, all of this is a nightmare. If I were to press the fast forward button, which is today, there is a much easier way of concluding the same thing. This infrastructure that you have deployed, 5 6 different types of technologies that you have deployed that need to be managed, can be broken down as a code. And that's what F5 distributed cloud services it does. You put a code, which is an infrastructure as a code. It's a piece of software that you put that allows you all these functionalities. Now the beauty is you can put it in front of any application across any cloud and then connect them over the internet, or connect them with direct connects. That's not a problem. The fact now is you have a single console, and when you want to do policy management, you can do it with a single command. You don't have to scratch your head and think, did I patch my router? Did I make sure that the API gateway is patched? Did I do my reverse proxy the right way? Is my WAF signatures all done? Now you can do all of that with a single click. So the life of the operations team and the team that manages compliance and policy becomes that much simpler. It was, in the previous world, not very easy to switch on these services. It's been fairly a tiresome part. If I want to add new functionality, while the developers are building those functionalities, but the network is not ready to offer those functionalities, because you now have to provision them. So provisioning them was a pain. But if F5 distributed cloud services are deployed, we convert something that was deployed in weeks and months to a matter of hours. That's the guarantee we have.
Okay, thank you. That still leaves one point. I'd
Yeah.
say from an IT decision maker, whatever be the CTO or CIO in the enterprise, you mentioned about the what realistic scenario, what we have seen while you were mentioning provisioning the applications, especially the containerized one. Um, Typically scenario what we see is not just multi-cloud environment, but even applications are containerized with solutions from different vendors
Hmm.
maybe, and there when there are these sort of, if I may use the word, conflict of these multiple containers, what we have seen that integration is not very seamless. So either one is you rip off whatever is your legacy application and move towards a new service or a solution, or there is always a sort of a conflict when there are multiple containers from different kind of vendors. So how do you address that challenge, or would it require a complete, let's say, migration by removing the whatever be the existing infrastructure?
That's actually a brilliant question. And a lot of our clients kind of tend to live with the deficiencies of the system around them because, maybe we haven't done a great job of going and telling them that the world has changed drastically. Um, there are multiple choices that the client has to put the containers on. Um, but most of the solutions that I see that are, available today are solutions which were 10 years old and have kept pace with the changing technology. And now they are ready to retrofit a containerized application, not a monolithic app. So you can definitely put on the monolithic applications, but they have changed the code, or they have improved the code to have a containerized application reside on them as well, the underlying infrastructure. However, these were codes that were written not for the containerized world, right? The containerized world started happening a couple of years ago, whereas the infrastructure and the layers that are available today on which these containerized codes are going were written about a decade and about a dozen years ago. So along with F5 distributed cloud services, what we have launched is a product which is called the World Stack, in which is which is made for the containerized world and made today. So rather than multiple click deployment, it's a single click deployment and a encasement in which you can put your containerized application in a more seamless, more friendly way, because it is written for the container technology and written today, not written 10 years ago. So yes, we are ready to provide a uniform containerized environment for our clients, pretty much on the same F5 distributed cloud services. F5 distributed cloud services has many POPs around the world. These POPs are connected together. The F5 distributed cloud services, these POPs not only connect within themselves, but also connect to public cloud providers. So we have peerings with AWS, GCP, Azure. We have peerings with other SaaS providers such as Workday, such as SFDC, other SaaS platform providers also peer with us. So there is tremendous amount of value that we can bring to our clients, not only from an environment and connectivity point of view, but also other peering requirements that the client may have.
Thanks. So that brings to the next question, and moving a little bit to the business side of it. You
Yeah, yeah,
mentioned about pairing with the public cloud providers like the AWS, Azure, or other SaaS providers.
right.
So overall, especially for the F5 cloud distributed services, what sort of go-to-market strategy or model you have for the Indian market?
So F5 continues to operate through our value-added partners in the market. We haven't deviated from that strategy. That's been our global accepted strategy, is to work through our trained partners in each country. So we will not deviate from that. That will continue to happen. And we'll continue to invest in our partner forums, in our partner, all the partnerships that we have in India and elsewhere in the world. We'll continue to invest in them, in their skill set, to ensure that they are running as fast as we are and addressing all the new gen technologies and new gen requirements of our clients. So that's one part of our strategy. Second is, which are the markets which are consuming us? So when I look around, I see the two biggest market for us are the two regulated markets, which is telco and BFSI. Telco and BFSI anywhere around the planet are highly regulated. And in a regulated market, it is mandated to have all the layers of security. It's mandated to have all the right set of tools and technologies. So BFSI, telco are very big markets. Government is another big market for us, along with the large enterprise and ITS companies. These are our target markets that give us the maximum amount of revenue, at least in India. And in terms of technology, while we have a lot of ADC deployments or load balancing deployments that continue to happen and see traction, what we have seen as new solutions that are getting adopted in the market is as banking transactions are becoming more and more, the amount of transactions per second increase, the secure socket layer requirement, SSLO offload requirement, the web application firewall requirement, API security requirements, from a technology security, CWPP, which is cloud workload protection requirements. These are also growing, very strongly. The other requirements that we have seen come up on the technology side is DDoS and DNS security, along with integrated bot protection. So a lot, I would say 90% of the HTTPS traffic that we see on the web today is automation. Now we have to figure out whether that is good automation or bad automation. Not all automation is bad, but a large chunk of the automation is bad. How do we determine that the traffic which is coming into my network, is it a good bot? Is it a human being or is it a bot? If it's a human being, allow the traffic. If it's a good bot, allow the traffic. Once you've allowed the traffic in, you have to then determine whether this human being that you have allowed in is a good human being or a bad actor. After you've done that, you have to determine whether you are really who you say you are. Is that Rajneesh, or is that someone else with a synthetic identity of Rajneesh? So we have started taking the security to a higher notch, and not just the static web application firewall signatures, but also very dynamic requirements, which I just spoke of, through our other acquisitions that we have done, which is Shape Security. So bot protection and artificial intelligence and machine learning to provide dynamic levels of security to a lot of B2C clients is part of our offering as well. So that's a big focus for us. And then I would say another large focus is a DevOps environment, right? In the CI/CD pipeline, the solutions that we have seen move for us is load balancing, same firewall engine that we have used elsewhere, Kubernetes ingress controller, and API gateway and API security. So these are the solutions on the DevOps side. So other than addressing the NetOps world that we used to till 2010, we expanded our portfolio to address the CISO, which is a SecOps world. And thereafter, with the Nginx acquisition, we are now have a rich portfolio for the DevOps world. So NetOps, SecOps, DevOps, all the three legs of the stool are now addressed pretty comprehensively by F5 Solutions.
Okay, that's um, very nice summation in a nutshell. Specifically, now when you are mentioned about specific target verticals, where starting from your traditional load balancing to the even the DevOps kind of solutions, and
Right,
can you identify? You mentioned the bot protection for B2C companies. Other
right.
than that, similarly for some of your high traction verticals, can you mention some use cases
Yeah, yeah,
of specific
absolutely.
solutions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me mention a large bank, one of the largest banks in India. Number of transactions for either net banking or mobile banking have gone through the roof, and that's true for any bank. Um, Again, all the traffic, according to RBI, needs to be encrypted. Now there are two choices with our customers: either buy an equipment which is doing encryption decryption at every hop, right? So the traffic comes in, hits one type of technology. We don't manufacture all technologies, so there are multiple technologies inside a data center. One approach is the traffic hits one technology, that technology decrypts it, processes it, then has to encrypt it, and then send it forward to the next hop. In the older world, where the traffic was less and the encryption was not such a big deal, it could go to a certain scale. In the newer world, when you look at it, this is a highly inefficient way of doing things. You can't be doing encryption, decryption at every hop. The whole idea should be traffic comes in, it is a specialized technology that looks at that traffic, decrypts the traffic, sends the traffic to various entities in a data center where it needs to go to. That's called offloading. Those entities process the traffic in whichever way they want to process it, sends it back to the encryptor decryptor, and the encryptor decryptor then encrypts it at one place and sends it back. Now there are many advantages. Now you are encrypting decrypting in one place, and you can make an HA configuration so that nothing, if it fails, it fails over, and it always is. It's more efficient. It can process more number of transactions than the older way of doing things. And if you stuck to the older way of doing things, you actually have to buy higher capacities, because the CPU intensiveness for SSL encryption decryption is very high. So you're spending a lot of money for doing something that can be offloaded. So we have seen web application firewalls get deployed extensively in secure environments like banks. SSL offload happen extensively, to continue to, one, enjoy the security of the technology that it offers, but also not lose out on the processing speeds which are required. These are, two, most important steps that I've seen a lot of banking clients take. Their core applications continue to be inside their own data center. They are all very data center focused, but there are a lot of third party applications that banks use that don't require their own data center to operate in, and those can be taken away. Maybe IT applications that the banks use, those can be taken away to the public cloud. So I have now seen a lot of applications in a banking environment. The core ones stay inside, and the non-core ones go to the cloud environment. The beauty that we have is we can offer the same engine both places, so that the experience of the client remains the same.
Okay. Thanks. So primarily, again, a little corollary of what you said.
Mhm.
And earlier you mentioned about, if we say the traditionally your solutions have been NetOps, so that means dealing more with the CIOs and
In,
CTOs of the organizations.
yes, yes, more
Subsequently,
infrastructure.
SecOps was
Yes,
more with the CISOs, and
yes,
now you have DevOps, so it's with the ISVs and the developer communities who work with
massively.
the
Yes.
enterprises. So my question is, and especially again, bringing the pandemic in the last 2 years, how the enterprises workload patterns have changed. How has the conversations that you have with it can be CIOs or CISOs or the ISVs, how are the fundamental nature of those conversations changed, and where are those changes happening?
So one of the most interesting conversations we've had on the DevOps side, if I were to stay with the DevOps for a bit more, is most of the DevOps world is open source friendly. Now, that's both a good and a bad thing. Open source is not necessarily the best protected source on which you put your production, right? But a lot of industries and clients, not just in India, but elsewhere in the world, especially in the DevOps community, they go out there, they deploy open source, and then you have a log4j happening. Now, the problem with the open source is it meets almost all your requirements. You really don't have to pay a dime. But patching of the open source for CVEs happens with a quarter to 2 quarters gap than the paid product. So that's something that a lot of developers don't care for. Security becomes an afterthought. Now with the log4j that happened and a couple of other CVEs that were exploited, there is some amount of consciousness that is coming by in the developer community that everything free may not be the best way to go forward. Now, the best way to go forward is the developer community uses the open source software. In my case, it would be the Nginx web server, Nginx load balancer, Nginx web protect, or Kubernetes ingress gateway controller, or the API gateway. Some of it is available as open source, and quite frankly, a lot of our clients have deployed it, and that's the model that we choose to be in. However, when all of the developed product needs to be scaled, when it goes to the platform team, that team now needs to be very careful on their open source strategy. They need to make sure that whatever they have deployed is adequately patched, so that when they put production, they're not exposing the productions to a environment which is prone to threat. So that is what needs to change, and I see that change happening gradually in the DevOps side. The DevOps side, otherwise, is fairly self-sustained, since most of the products are available of freely off the web, and even support if you hit a if you hit a stop, and you put out that question in the open ether, there are many people who will answer and help you solve that problem. So they are a self-sufficient ecosystem, the DevOps community. The only message I have for the DevOps community is, when you hit scale and when you hit production, step away from open source. Look very carefully of why you need to pay. For now, these paid versions are adequately patched and will provide you more protection, because when you lose much heavy. So that's the change that I'm seeing, but it's very gradual. I wish it was a little more exponential than what it is today in India.
Okay. And more directly on the Indian customers, you mentioned specifically the focus, obviously, BFSI, telco, IT, ITS, government to an extent. I'd like to understand two things. One, obviously, whatever are referenceable customers, those names, and more importantly, I would like to understand when you are looking at a newer customer acquisition, what are the principles or the sort of, I won't say marketing initiatives, but what are the premises on which those marketing initiatives are based when you are targeting the newer customers now?
So let me answer the first question. Just yesterday, we have a great reference from Asian Paints. The company is very famous. The logo is very famous. You should check out LinkedIn or check out F5 customer reference page. There are many references from Indian customers, from Bangladeshi customers, from Sri Lankan customers across the domains such as enterprise domains like Asian Paints, across banking, and the use case for Asian Paints was they wanted a managed offering for managing web application firewall, and we offered them our Silverline managed offering that is managing a number of FQDNs for them, and we offer that service directly of our own Silverline cloud. So that story just came out 2 days ago, Rajneesh. It's hot out of the press, and there are a couple of other references that I can send you links of, and those are publicly referenceable customers. That was the first question. Your second question around the customers was,
The newer customers
how
on
do we
what
how are we approaching them?
criteria? Yeah.
Yes, so we have seen the dialogue that attracts most amount of attention is a dialogue around security, their current postures, their future needs, current deployment, gaps that we can see currently in their environment, and how do we or how can we address those gaps. The other interesting dynamic which is happening is I am a customer that makes paints. Do I need a rocket scientist to deploy my WAF? Do I need to have the skill set that are changing ever so quickly? If I'm going to AWS, I have to learn new technologies that are prevalent in AWS. If I go to Azure, I have to learn new technology. That's not the business they are in. Skill set, offloading the skill sets to either a partner or to somebody like us who have all the skill sets that are required to be given to them in a managed services format, that is gaining more maturity and traction. So they don't want to own the assets all by themselves anymore. They are quite customers in India are very mature and are now quite happy to have the assets lie on the cloud. And of course, with the cloud comes the consumption models. Now I can consume off as a subscription for as much as I need, not build something for 3 years from now and pay for it today. So those are some of the other discussions which are becoming very popular in terms of what is the most optimal way of consuming the technology. Yeah, okay, fine, F5 is great technology, but do you offer subscription? Do you offer pay per use? Do you offer a flexible consumption model? Do you offer perpetual with services for several years? So F5 has all these models, and we have seen our engagements on consumption become more mature.
Another just a question is again, as you mentioned, some of your customers are from verticals which are highly regulated,
Yeah.
and more importantly, the pandemic has necessitated a lot of what we earlier mentioned, a lot of dynamic provisioning, which while the compliances, the regulatory compliances are sort of designed and devised over a period of time, the pandemic necessitated a lot of quick adoption. How did you manage the compliance issue during this time, especially as we are working with highly regulated environment?
PCI DSS compliance is part of our DNA. It's part of our hygiene. HIPAA compliance is part of our hygiene. couple of ISO certification and compliance is part of our hygiene. So products inherently offer these services from a compliance perspective. It's a check mark as far as F5 is concerned. So we didn't have to spend a lot of CPU cycles trying to convince our clients that we are compliant with these policies. It's fairly well known fact. Where we spent time was, if you remember, in February 2020 or February 2021, RBI came up with a master digital direction for BFSI industry, including NBFCs. It's a 22-page document, very detailed document that describes how a bank should be protecting its infrastructure and how a bank or an NBFC should be protecting its application. It's very, very prescriptive. And we kind of consumed that, we digested that, and we came up with a consulting paper for our BFSI customers saying, here are the 22 pages of what RBI is asking you to do. 60 to 70% can be achieved with F5 technology alone. And that has been a very successful campaign for us.
Great. So my last question would be obviously looking forward, if we look forward for the next 3 to 4 quarters, maybe specifically for the Indian market, what are your key focus areas? They can be in terms of new solutions and services or other expansion plans also.
So all the energy and vigor will be towards F5 distributed cloud services. We have POPs which are coming up in India. Those POPs will go live in the month of June. Currently, we can offer those services from POPs from elsewhere in the world that we have constructed. And then these POPs will join the global application delivery network. That will remain a continuous and a focal point of our discussion with the clients in terms of what new services can we offer and new use cases we can open up, not only for the regulated market, but for the small, medium market also to consume F5. Typically, F5 used to address the large enterprise market. With the F5 distributed cloud services, F5 suddenly opens up a very, very massive small, medium market that we could not address primarily because we were kind of higher end solution with higher throughput requirements. But with the cloud services, we can now have fractional solutions that can meet any need in the market today. So I'm personally extremely excited. You will see a lot of campaigns that we will be doing around F5 distributed cloud services.
For these the distributed services for the SME clients, any time frame you can indicate?
We can go live today, and we have many opportunities that are going live today. It's just that since our point of presence is under construction, we are absorbing them in points of presence either in Singapore or in Australia today. But all of those will migrate to our points of presence in India that we are building, and all of them will go live in June in India. So that will take care of all the regulatory requirements of data not going out of the country and so on and so forth. So those will be addressed as soon as our POPs in India go live, and that's happening in June. But there are a lot of SMB clients that are not regulated, and they can have their data pointing to POPs anywhere in the world to consume the service that we are offering, and that traction is increasing literally every week.
Great. Thanks a lot for the interaction today. Thank you.
Rajneesh, thank you very much for your time as well. Really appreciate that. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.